What does the path to a national duels title for the Iowa Hawkeyes look like? We're going to break that down for the top seeded Iowa Hawkeyes. Of course, Saturday and Sunday, the National Duels Invitational, sponsored by Paycom, are going down. And as I mentioned, the Iowa Hawkeyes are going to be there, and they're going to be the top seed. Here's their path. In round one, we already know who they're wrestling. They're going to be wrestling the Missouri Tigers, Coach Brian Smith. And the Tigers always have a very, very tough dual squad. But in this matchup, the Iowa Hawkeyes are a pretty substantial favorite. Now, there are a few matchups of note, but I'll say off the rip, if you look at the out of the 10 matches, I would say Iowa is pretty strongly favored in 8 of the 10. Now, what are the two where they could fall? Well, 149, Josh Edmond is there for the Missouri Tigers. Iowa is still unranked at 149. Now, whether they're going to be using Kale Voinovich or Ryder Block is a question. But either way, Edmond would be a favorite in there. And then at 197, Evan Bates, a transfer from Northwestern, now at Missouri. He would be a favorite over Mo Indine from Iowa, the transfer, who we're going to learn a lot about this weekend. I'm excited to watch Indine wrestle. But looking at the other matchups, Dean Peterson versus likely Mac Malger from Missouri. You favor Dean there. 133, Drake Ayala versus Cade Moore. They've wrestled, I think, twice. Drake has teched him on both occasions. Now, 141 is a really interesting matchup because you got Nasir Bailey for Iowa, transfer from Little Rock to the Hawkeyes, ranked 10th in America. Now, he could be taking on either Zeke Seltzer, who just had a nice showing at the Tiger Style Invite, or true freshman Seth Mendoza. Now, I think this would be a great spot to utilize Seth Mendoza. First off, he has those 5 dates as a true freshman. See where he fits. Brian Smith has said, hey, we're going to wrestle our best guys. And I think we see Mendoza in this spot, and I can't wait for this match. I think Nasir Bailey versus Seth Mendoza is a competitive one. Now, the differentiator being Nasir Bailey's top game potentially is a true freshman in Mendoza, but something to monitor there. 157, Jordan Williams versus James Conway. He's a favorite. Caliendo's favored over Max Mayfield, another transfer. And then at 74 and 84 are maybe the two marquee matches of this dual meet. You've got Patrick Kennedy versus All-American Cam Steed. He was an All-American down at 165. And then you've got Angelo Ferrari versus Aiden Sinclair. You love this matchup. This is the one we've been talking about since Iowa drew Missouri round one. 2 star freshmen, 2 guys that I think are going to be contending for national titles throughout their careers. This is going to be a great one, and this is going to be a huge, huge test for Angelo Ferrari. Make no mistake. He may be the favorite on paper, but Aiden Sinclair has a great chance to win this one. So for the Iowa Hawkeyes, you're going to favor them pretty strongly there. And then as you start to play the matchups game, I think they're going to end up with Illinois in the second round. Illinois has Little Rock, so it could still be Coach Arisman's Trojans out of Little Rock, Arkansas. But I think it's going to be Illinois, and that sets up some really great matchups. So you've got right away at 133, you're going to have Drake Ayala versus Lucas Bird. That was the Big Ten and NCAA finals last year. That's going to be a round 2 matchup potentially. This one on paper could be a little tougher because I think you've got 2 weights where Illinois is favored, 133, though Drake has beaten Lucas Bird in the past. And then you also have 197, K Lout, maybe a favorite over Indine, although I think that's more of a toss-up. And then I think you have a couple other toss-ups with 25, number 10, Dean Peterson, number 13, Spencer Moore. You've got 149, 2 unranked guys there, and then 157, Jordan Williams versus Cannon Webster. That's the 7 versus the 8. So I think that's that they have the opportunity to compete there. And I'm really high on Braden Scholes out of Illinois. Now, he's got Michael Caliendo, so Caliendo's going to be a favorite there. And to me, Iowa looks like they're probably going to cruise here. I would also mention at the heavyweight class, Ben Keeter versus Luke Luffman. That's a 5 versus 7 matchup. So there's a lot of ranked versus ranked matchups, similarly ranked guys. But at the end of the day, Iowa has too much firepower here. I think they're strong favorites to make it to the semifinals, which will be going down Sunday morning. The first 2 matches will take place on Saturday. Then that third match, that's championship semifinal, goes down Sunday morning. And let's get into it. Ever since the bracket came out, we knew this was a possibility that we would get a treat of Iowa versus Oklahoma State in November. And I think if you look at the matchups for Oklahoma State, you look at the matchups for Iowa, it would take a pretty sizable upset to prevent this semifinal from happening. And I think we will get Iowa versus Oklahoma State. Now, we've seen both of these teams wrestle one match. For Oklahoma State, they wrestled Stanford, so that's a team with just more ranked guys, more highly ranked guys. So we've seen Oklahoma State a little more tested than Iowa. Oklahoma State lost 2 matches in their opening duel. Iowa won 10 matches to 0 against Bellarmine. So we know a little bit about these guys, and one thing we know about Oklahoma State is that their freshman class is absolutely for real. But before we get into the matchups, on paper, I think Iowa is favored at 33, 41, 65, 74, and heavyweight. Okay, I think it's a pretty clear 5 there for them. And I think for Oklahoma State, they're favored at 25, 49, 57, and then 197. And I think there's toss-ups at 74, 84, and really you could talk me into heavyweight being a toss-up, but I watched Ben Keeter beat Connor Doucette already. So let's get into the match by match. And I'm slotting favorites, but most of these matches are very much in the margin. Starting at 125, Dean Peterson versus Troy Spratley. You know, Troy's the returning NCAA finalist, but we know how good Dean Peterson can be. He's one of the few guys in America with a folk-style win over Luke Lillidahl. He beat him last year, and now he's at Iowa. They have a great track record of success with the lightweights. This is going to be a close one between Dean Peterson and Troy Spratley, and this is one for the Hawkeyes. If they want to steal that momentum early and put themselves in position to win, Dean Peterson beating Troy Spratley would be a great way to start. 133 is interesting because I said that Iowa is favored here, but those Iowa Hawkeye fans will not forget that Drake Ayala fell to Richard Figueroa in the NCAA Finals 2 years ago. So, how does that play out 2 years later? I think the reason Drake Ayala is a favorite there, despite the previous meeting, is he's been so much better, so consistent throughout his career. Whereas Richard, we just have not seen that level of consistency. So, for that reason, I think Drake's the favorite. But, hey, Richard Figueroa is a national champion. There can be no surprise if this guy wins any match this year, including over a very tough Drake Ayala. Then you go to 41. This is another one where you have to say Nasir Bailey, the 10th ranked guy, he's an All-American, is the favorite on paper. But, man, didn't Sergio Vega look great against Stanford? I thought so. I thought he looked fantastic. So I think this one is going to be in the margins, but I still favor Nasir Bailey in this matchup. I think some of those scrambles and those positions that Vega was able to get into, I don't think Nasir's going to go there. I think the match is going to be wrestled where Nasir wants, maybe not where Sergio Vega wants it. So then 49, Swiderski's a favorite over Voinovich or Block. 57, I say Rapidu's the favorite. It's one match. He beat Daniel Cardenas, but a win like that is pretty unique, and there's not a lot of guys walking around with a win that good. Now, you could say, if you're an Iowa fan, you're like, well, this is probably more of a toss-up with Jordan Williams. Maybe so. I'm just giving you my read of the situation is that I would favor Landon Rapidu in this match. 65, love that D. Lockett got that win over Hunter Garvin. I think that's a statement. But to me, first time, first crack, I think Caliendo's the favorite here at 65. His ability to get the legs and finish, I think Lockett's going to need to experience that one time before he's going to beat him. So I think Caliendo the favorite there. And then 74, Patrick Kennedy versus Alex Facundo. So these two wrestled a couple of years ago. It was a 2-1 tiebreaker win for Patrick Kennedy. Now, a lot has changed since then. Patrick Kennedy went on to be an All-American. Facundo's been out of the lineup for 2 years. Now he's transferred and up a weight class at 174. And so I think there's, though a lot has changed, I think the reality is it's going to be a really close match. I would be surprised if it's not a one takedown or another overtime match between these two. I think Kennedy has gotten a lot better, but I think the same is probably true for Facundo. I don't see the mat being a factor unless it gets to tiebreakers again. I think it's going to be a neutral battle, and for that reason, I think this is definitely a toss-up. 84, Angelo versus Ryder. Love Zack Ryder. I have a hard time picking against Angelo in this spot. I feel like he's born to win these kinds of matches, and I just trust his leg attack offense enough to say that, okay, I see Angelo probably winning this match. Cody Merrill, a pretty good favorite for Oklahoma State over Mo and Dean at 197. And then at heavyweight, everyone's talking about this new look, new man, Connor Doucette. He's got to be a new man to beat Ben Keeter, who beat him 2 years ago in Keeter's true freshman year. And so for that reason, I can't say that Keeter's not the favorite there. So I've got 4 favorites for Oklahoma State. I've got 4 favorites for Iowa. And I have 2 toss-ups. So it could very likely, it's going to come down to upsets or these toss-up matches. If Iowa can end up sweeping at 74 and 84, then they're very likely going to win. But similarly, if those are Oklahoma State's matches, it's theirs to be won. And what I like about this dual meet is, like, I can throw out all the scenarios you want, and I can give you all these hypotheses. The reality is all these matches are so, the skill level, the ability is so even in almost all of these matches. There's very few runaway favorites here, in my opinion. And so with that, there's myriad paths for both teams to end up winning, right? And so a win here puts you in the final. Now, who's going to be in that final? That's a good question. I like Ohio State's team. I think they've got a good, 10 wrestlers. If they're there and healthy, they've got a good shot to beat, Minnesota and Nebraska to get there. So the question is, who does Iowa face after the Oklahoma State duel? Well, it's going to be either Ohio State or Nebraska, in my opinion. So if they lose, they get the loser of the other semi, and if they win, they're in the finals. Let's first take a look at that Ohio State matchup. So Iowa versus Ohio State. I think Iowa is favored at 25, 33, 65, 84, and heavyweight. I think Ohio State's favored at 41, 49, and 197. And then I have 2 toss-ups as well. 125, you got Dean Peterson versus Brendan McCrone or Nick Bouzakis. This is 125. It's 2 or 3 wrestlers that have never placed at the national tournament. So this is a lean towards Dean Peterson, but definitely the door's open there for an upset for the Buckeyes. 33, maybe another upset possibility. I think Drake Ayala is just too solid, too tough, and I think his left-handed single leg, his pass by, slide by, really good. He's going to be tough for Ben DeVino to beat, even though I'm so high on Ben DeVino this year. I think he's going to make a lot of noise and potentially All-American as a freshman. But then Ohio State's got their national champion, 2-time champ, Jesse Mendez at 41. He should be a good favorite over Nasir Bailey. Ethan Styles, a favorite over whoever Iowa puts on the mat, whether it's Ryder Block or Kale Voinovich. Then 57, this is a toss-up to me. Jordan Williams, Brandon Cannon. I have no idea. Brandon Cannon's got great scrambling, but so does Jordan Williams. Cannon maybe a little better from the top position than Jordan. Jordan maybe has a better ability to get to legs. This is a toss-up. I can't call this one. Caliendo, a favorite at 65 over Patty Gallagher. I think Kennedy and Hartzler is maybe a favorite, though I think Hartzler has had the edge here in this matchup historically, and this would be one for Ohio State you're going to probably want to get 174 if you think you have a path to win this dual meet. So on paper, it's a toss-up, but you maybe favor Hartzler just given their history and him being able to beat him on 2 other occasions. Then we go to 84. I think Angelo's a solid favorite over Dylan Fishback, the transfer from NC State to Ohio State. Fishback's good, but I think he's a rung below Angelo Ferrari. That point scoring ability, the leg attacks, the defense, the grit. I think Angelo Ferrari's got the advantage here. 97, Luke Geog. We think a favorite over Indine. Indine, a very unknown commodity, but I would still favor Geog. Had a great opening weekend at Clarion, and I would expect him to be able to beat Mo Indine, at least at this point in the season. Then heavyweight, listen, you can say everything you want. I mean, I think Nick Feldman's great, but the bottom line is Ben Keeter is 3-0, and the gap actually widened at the national tournament. You got to make Keeter a favorite here, even though it's a 5 or 6 matchup. the gap is very real, and Keeter knows how to beat Nick Feldman, and he's done it 3 times already. Hard to pick against that. So I would say Iowa is a favorite over Ohio State, but I'd say it's narrow. The path for Ohio State, they need to pick up an upset, but they need to hold at 41-49. They need to win the toss-up at 57-74 and 97, and they still might need one more upset, whether that comes from 33 or 25 or heavyweight. They're going to need one of those other guys to win to knock off Iowa. It's a pretty, it's not totally uphill, but it's going to be difficult, and Iowa is a favorite here in this matchup. And then you go down the other potential matchup after their semifinal, Nebraska. So Nebraska, I would say, matches up pretty well against the Hawkeyes. But it doesn't start great at the lightweights, 25-33. I think Dean Pearson's a solid favorite over Cale Laritzin of Nebraska. And I think Drake Ayala is a favorite. He's had success against Jacob Van D. Van D, slower start this year. Already took a loss to Raymond Lopez, so you favor Drake to keep rolling there. Then you got Brock Hardy for the Huskers, as the Huskers are going to get on the board at 41. And then 49, I think is a toss-up. You got two unranked guys, probably Nikade Zinkin for Nebraska versus either Cale Voinovich or Ryder Block. Flip a coin on that one. I thought Nikade Zinkin, for what it's worth, looked really good in his match against Army, so he's definitely a guy to keep your eye on. Then at 57, the champ is the favorite here, Antrell Taylor over Jordan Williams. That would be my pick. Should be a fun match, but Antrell Taylor, the national champion for a reason. Then 74. Both these guys placed fourth last year. It was Chris Minto fourth at 165, Kennedy fourth at 174. Minto is a tough guy to score on. Great defensively. And I think this is going to be an extremely competitive match. This is a toss-up to me. I can't really call a favorite. Maybe you would say Kennedy because he's established at this weight class, but I think Minto's going to have a really solid season, and this could be a upset on paper for Minto. Angelo's a favorite over Silas Allred, in my opinion. Allred's tough. He's beaten some great guys in his career, but I'm going to be picking Angelo in a lot of matches till I see him lose one. Camden McDaniel, All-American for Nebraska, favored over Moen Dean, and then AJ Ferrari, I would believe he is a favorite over Ben Keeter. So what does that have it? That has 4 favored for Iowa, 4 for Nebraska, and then those 2 toss-ups. I would probably lean on the Iowa side for this one, but man, the Huskers, they certainly were outperforming at the end of last year. They've had so much success. This is really probably a coin flip duel. It could be the finals. It could be the third place match. We don't really know. But I thought it was good to kind of preview all those different matchups. And yeah, it's going to be an amazing weekend of wrestling for the Iowa Hawkeyes. It's going to be a lot of fun. 4 duels for the Hawks. You'll be able to watch them all live on FloWrestling with the exception of the championship finals, which are on ESPN2. So if Iowa is wrestling in the finals, you're going to want to watch, tune into ESPN2 on Sunday evening. But it's going to be a great weekend of wrestling. What do you think about the Iowa Hawkeyes? They are the top seed. Do you see them winning the National Duels Invitational? I want to hear from you.